Patrick Mahomes just signed this $500 million 10-year extension. And we don't talk about the Chiefs, but I'm curious. I've been thinking, like, what does this mean for the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo? And to me, real quick, we've had an ongoing discussion about why the 49ers didn't extend Garoppolo this offseason. They could have. A lot of people thought they would, and they didn't. And I think you and I both assumed it's because the Niners aren't sold on Jimmy and want to see more, right?
I agree, yes.
Now, when you look at what Patrick Mahomes just signed, it averages $45 million a year, and he's not going to be the only one making that. The way NFL quarterback contracts work is probably next year someone will beat that, and then next year someone will beat that guy. It's always getting bigger. So perhaps the Niners have figured out that if they do want to extend Jimmy Garoppolo, it's going to be in the neighborhood of what Patrick Mahomes is making. So maybe it's becoming even more tough to keep your quarterback around. And if they're going to make an extension like that, they really, really, really got to know. So it's possible that they'll keep him around because as quarterback contracts are getting much bigger, maybe you look at him as a bargain. But I don't see how they re-sign him. It's just going to be like giving a guy $1 billion. Anyway, that's how I see it. What do you see?
I see. So your point is a money point, that the cheapo Yorks might not want to spend all that money on a quarterback. I would say, in fairness to the cheapo Yorks, that Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm sorry, 49er fans. Patrick Mahomes is a phenomenon, Iggy.
It's true. It's true.
He won the Super Bowl.
He did. I'm just trying to think like Garoppolo's agent.
Yes.
He's going to go in eventually and be like, well, you want to extend my guy. Look what Mahomes did. Yeah, sure, Mahomes is better. But his career record is 24-7. My guy's career record is 21-5. How much better is Mahomes? Yeah. And the agent's going to be able to say, he's going to pull up stats, he's going to pull up records and say, okay, maybe we deserve $42 million a year.
Okay, if I were the cheapo Yorks in that situation, I might actually get rid of Jimmy because he would take up so much of their salary structure at those numbers. You'd have to weaken the team around him. And you might be able to get a quarterback almost as good who could do the things that Kyle Shanahan wants. So I think Patrick Mahomes making that money won't help Jimmy and the agent. It might make the Niners not want to keep Jimmy. That's my look at it. What do you think?
That's my look at it too. And I think a lot of teams are going to be faced with this dilemma over the next couple of years. Like the Cowboys have that guy, Dak Prescott, who's a good quarterback, and they like him. But he's now going to want $40 million a year. Do you like him that much? And so it's a tough situation. It'd be so interesting if Bill Walsh were still alive and we could ask him, because he believed that the quarterback was by far the most important player on a team in a sport. But would he pay $500 million for one? Would he do that?
Especially when it meant, or might mean, that he didn't have receivers to throw the ball to, or an offensive line to protect him. I mean, Bill was. He wanted a good football team, not only a good quarterback. So, boy, this is I'm glad you brought this up, because it's not only a money question, it's a philosophy question.
Yes.
You're smart.
Well, thanks. I've been thinking about it a lot, because you look at like the Patriots. They are the philosophers of the NFL. They're not following anyone. They're the people. They're the team people copy, and they've had Tom Brady for 2 decades. Did they try to replace him with an expensive quarterback? No. They have a guy making $400,000 a year and Cam Newton making $5 million with incentives. So that's what they're doing. And then you look at the Saints. They still have Drew Brees, but they've been incorporating this Taysom Hill guy the last year or two. And when Brees leaves, what are they going to do? Are they going to sign another guy for $30 million or use Taysom Hill and another guy for cheap? It seems like the smart, forward-thinking organizations are already going this direction. And the Chiefs were in a tough spot. What are you going to do? Trade Patrick Mahomes? But maybe other teams like the Niners could look at these other teams, like the Saints and the Patriots, and say, well, you know what? Maybe we have options that we didn't have a couple of years ago.
I actually find it fascinating. Now, let's make one more point, because you're good at this. What percentage of the team total salary is good? Is it good for the team to pay a quarterback? So what do you think is the maximum that's good to pay a quarterback, maximum percentage?
I would cut it off at 10%, Dad. I mean, there's been a few quarterbacks who've won Super Bowls making more. Steve Young, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, but most haven't. I would say a good rule is 10 because here's what happens. For example, in 1996, the Packers had what looked like a dynasty. They had Brett Favre. He's making about 10% of their cap. Then the next year they come across the Broncos, who have John Elway, who's making 5% of the cap. How do you compete with that?
No.
How do you compete with that? They have a Hall of Fame quarterback too, but he's making half what your guy's making. Plus, they've loaded up the rest of their roster, and now you're screwed.
Okay.
So it's fair to pay Patrick Mahomes 11.7% of your cap. But what happens when you go against the Ravens and they have Lamar Jackson, who's making 1.5%, and their team's stacked too? He's not as good as Mahomes, but he doesn't have to be.
Very interesting. Now, final question. I always say final question, then I have more. Final question. What percentage currently of the Niners cap does Jimmy make?
Great question. 12.9.
What?
And that's a big number because the highest percentage a quarterback has ever had while winning a Super Bowl is 13.1. That's Steve Young. That was 1994. So the Niners and Jimmy are attempting to do something that only one team and one quarterback has ever pulled off. Tom Brady hasn't done it. Peyton Manning hasn't done it. Aaron Rodgers hasn't done it.
Wow. I didn't realize Jimmy was that much. So according to the wisdom of Grant Cohn, which I really respect, if 10 is the maximum, Jimmy's over the maximum, and that has repercussions throughout the whole roster.
Like, look at the Seahawks. Russell Wilson's great. We love him, right?
Oh.
And you'd think, yeah, he deserves all the money he makes, but he's making 15% of their salary cap. And you wonder, well, why don't they have a defensive line? Why is their offensive line always no good? Because of him. Because of him. And it's not that he's not good enough. It's just he makes too much money. And he's important, but he's not that important. There's 53 players on the team. You can't give 15% to one guy. You can't. I don't think you can. It's never been done on a Super Bowl winning team, so why even try?
I think this is a good place to end.
I think so.
I really appreciate you bringing this up. This was a fascinating topic, and you spoke very well about it.
Thanks for humoring me on this one, Dad. I appreciate it.